Fight and Talk back again, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Cage Warriors featherweight Harry Hardwick ahead of his bout against Vitor Estevam as part of Cage Warriors 157, going down in what, Harry, now July 21st?
I'm excited. It's been a long time since the last fought. Like, November is ages ago, and I'm wanting to get that feeling again. Like in a fight where you don't have to have a filter on any of your actions. When you're training, you have to put a filter on to not hurt your training partners, and you can just let go and just be so much more free when you're fighting, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. And then just the extra consequence to anything, like if you fuck something up, it means a lot more. All of that stuff is stuff I'm really looking forward to again.
I want to touch on that. Obviously, it has, 8-9 months, like you say there, November since you were last in the cage. How frustrating has it been? Because I know you were matched, I think, was it the last London card? And of course, your opponent then had to pull out with an injury.
No, I pulled out with the injury. Yeah, it was frustrating. So I was matched in March against Shaub Youssef. And then, I injured my neck and then trained through it. I think had I rested had I taken about a week off when I initially did the injury, I'd have probably been okay to go. But I kept going for 2 or 3 weeks. And then I was after pretty much every sparring session, when me and George would be talking about it, I'd just be like, yeah, it was really good. I just couldn't do as much because of my neck. Yeah, it was really good because I just couldn't do as much because of my neck. And that should have signaled alarm bells before I let it get as bad as it did. And I started getting stingers down my arm and stuff. And then I talked to a few people about it, and Peter Irving, one of my coaches, saying how bad his neck is from various injuries in his career, and it's stopping him sleeping and stuff. I was like, I don't want that to happen to me. So I took the cautious route and pulled out. But it was the right decision. It definitely was, and I still managed to make improvements while I wasn't training because of my neck. It was a bit awkward at first because when it got worse, I was starting to realize even stuff like hitting the bag and punching pads and stuff was aggravating it because it was affecting my traps and stuff. So I just was doing this weird phase of kicking and then doing machines while I was doing strength sessions, just stuff that kept my neck completely uninvolved. And then I went on holiday to Sweden. And then when I got back, the very first session, I was like, oh, George has a fight. We haven't got many southpaws in the gym. Leon's got a fight. We haven't got many people as weird as his opponent. Loads of the guys are not sparring because of Ramadan. Right. So I jumped right back into quite hard sparring, and luckily it was okay.
So is it a case of you didn't get your neck treated or anything? It just seems to have went back to being fine?
Yeah, I had a few people look at it and here and there, but I think it is just time is your best friend with that kind of thing. I made a bit more of an effort to do strengthening exercises, bit of an effort to avoid certain exercise, certain things headstands. Some people say they're good for neck strength, but I don't really subscribe to that. I don't do any headstands or neck bridges. I'll tend to do more of the put a resistance band around my head, do isometric holds, and that's helped a lot. But yeah, I think it was just time and not aggravating it was the main thing, and it's fucking sound now.
Good to hear. And you sort of touched on it there. Look, you'd said you got back from your holiday and there was a lot of lads had fights coming up. You've not been in the cage, but a lot of the MFA lads have been. How nice is it just to see the development in the gym? Yeah,
it's going really well. March was a weird month because we had a few fights booked, and then all of them fell through for whatever reason. I had a fight booked, Leon had a fight booked, Joe had a fight booked. Leon's fight got cancelled for whatever reason. I got injured. Joe, the whole show got cancelled. So it was quite a weird start to the year. We didn't have our first fight from anyone from the gym until George fought in April. But we've been busy. For a small team, we've been busy since then. Going 5-1. We had George with a stoppage, Leon with a stoppage, Zanya with a stoppage, Sonny with a stoppage, and Mustafa with a stoppage. And then Joe had split decision, really close, amazing fight. It's just all been good. It's really good seeing the gym go from strength to strength. We've had to start splitting the classes now because they've been getting too busy. So now we have but again, that's helped because now we have dedicated sessions just for the fighters. And it means we don't have, because there was a point where George was preparing for a world title fight and there was someone who, it was probably their first session and the other end of the mat. And you kind of had to cater drills that would work for everyone. Whereas now the classes are separate. We can really get more out of the drills and stuff in the fighter sessions.
And now, like we say, you are now eventually back in there, of course, Vitor Estevam. I've tried to look up on him, and there's not a lot. Well, I certainly couldn't see much footage out there on him. I feel like it's a bit of an Ian Dean special, this one, where he's managed to find this fella from absolutely nowhere, and he's going to come over and bring a real fight. What do you make of Vitor as an opponent?
Well, I've found a fair bit of footage. I think he's one of these where he's a Brazilian, and his nickname is his second name on a lot of the videos. So his nickname is Soldado, which means soldier. So it's if you type in Vitor Soldado MMA on YouTube, you get more of his fights than if you type in Vitor Estevam. He is training partners with the guy who's fighting Sharia, so I think it was kind of an easy, all right, there's another featherweight there. We'll get Harry fighting him, because I was just begging Ian Dean for an opponent. I don't know how allowed to say this I am, but initially it was Harila for the interim title. But Harila hurt his thumb putting it somewhere. So we've got Vitor Estevam. He's a sort of low-paced Brazilian Muay Thai stylist. Doesn't particularly have the best footwork. Decent, very solid check, can check leg kicks in a very solid fashion. You don't really see that a lot in MMA. Decent check hook. When he doesn't like what's going on the feet, which can be a lot. He likes his own pace and he likes to think about what he's doing. And then when people start pressuring him and start throwing things and start, mixing unpredictable combinations up, all this stuff that I don't do very well. He then starts just and he'll bum in on shots, and if the shot fails, he'll come up to a clinch. But a lot of these Brazilian guys that he's been shooting on have kind of pulled guard as he's shot on them. Whereas I'm not going to do that. I'm going to knee him in his face, and then I'm going to sprawl, and then I'm going to keep fighting, and it's just going to be horrible. He's going to have to work really, really hard. The pace he's used to fighting at. His last fight went 3 rounds. I think I threw more strikes in the first 3 minutes of my fight against Emil than he did in the 3 rounds of his last fight. I think he's really going to struggle with a lot of things. I think because he's undefeated, he doesn't quite know what he's getting into. I think he's just oh yeah, I've won my fights and it's been okay because I've fought. I think he's going to realize very quickly that that's not what's going on. That this is different. This is an incredibly different experience to his other fights. He's not fighting some bum in jungle fight. He's coming in 2 cage warriors and fighting the best featherweight they've got, and he's getting his head smashed in. I think he'll be stubborn. He won't really accept what's going on initially, but he's just going to be getting landed on and broken down, and he's going to be struggling. And what he's going to try and do isn't going to work. And then eventually, just bit by bit, he's going to get broken down and finished.
So was it a case then, I've got to ask you about that since you mentioned it, was it a case of you just wanting to get out there and fight literally anybody? You've said yourself, look, you're at the top of the division. That interim title bout, if that had come to, sort of proves that. This fight coming from way left field, the guy who I don't think is on a multi-fight deal with Cage Warriors, you certainly know any other top of the division, other names that you'd expect yourself to be fighting. Is this now just a case of wanting to get back in there and just literally taking a fight with anyone?
Yeah, when Ian told me that Harila was injured, I was just right, okay, just whoever it is, title, no title. The most important thing is that I fight July 21st. That is the most important thing over everything. I need to fight.
So the division itself then, where do you sort of see? Because I know for a long time when we had Jordan and Paul at the very top, it was sort of bottleneck there. James Henn taking that last minute fight against Jordan Vucenic as well. How do you see the division now? I don't believe Paul Hughes has got a contract yet. There doesn't seem to be any mention of a contender series or anything for him. There's a wry smile there though, so you might know something more than me.
No, like there was sheets of people, like other people on the Contender series, like their transport sheets that we were on when we were there in Vegas with George, and his name wasn't on it.
So
like
what do you think's next for him?
I don't know. I think he's content on not fighting for Cage Warriors again. I think that might be something. I think he's trying to just be ready for, I don't know, like a short notice UFC London or a short notice UFC Paris. He might be trying to get through on the Contender series. But I really don't think he wants to fight for Cage Warriors again for whatever reason. I think it's kind of dumb. I think if he'd have just defended his title when they were last in Dublin, he'd be off to the UFC if he'd have won that fight. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't know. There's probably contract ins and outs that I have no qualifications to be reading or understanding. So yeah, it's a strange one. It's very frustrating. Like, it's really frustrating. But I don't give a fuck at this point. I just want to fight. I don't care. I don't care who. Just want to fight. Like, I've been in the gym. I've been getting better. But I've been coaching and being in these corners for all these fights. I've been at all these fight shows. I want to be in there myself now. Like, it's my turn.
And look, I know you certainly won't be looking over Vitor, but if you do get your hand raised against him, is it that title shot that you want next, or is it again just one of these where if Ian Dean's got somebody else for you, you'll take that and just wait until he sort of says yes for the title? Or for you, do you want Cage Warriors Gold next?
I might kick up a fuss and ask for Contender series. I really like being in Vegas. It was nice. So if we can just, I think as well, because the UFC people haven't been at any of my previous Cage Warriors fights, where they will be at this one, because obviously the UFC is the next day. So I have a feeling they've not actually seen my fights. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, my record, there's a lot of, especially in Cage Warriors, there's lots of decisions, but they don't really speak to the quality of the fights I've been having. Whereas I think as soon as UFC people see what I'm about, they're like, oh, okay, this guy has good fights. Let's sign, let's Contender series to fight him. Because fucking Enver Sonrez is on Contender series. Did you watch his last fight?
No.
Well, fucking no one did. It was shit. I was there live and I didn't watch it because I couldn't be fucking arsed. It's like he fought some shit guy who was gassed from like 2 minutes in, and Sonrez just took him down and squeezed on him. He's wank. The fact that he is on Contender series, he is the featherweight from Cage Warriors who's on Contender series, I find personally offensive. They could have picked fucking anyone, and they picked someone as boring and as shit as him. Mind blowing. I mean, he's probably getting chinned by this guy he's fighting. But farts my head, it does.
Does that add any pressure then to you, or do you put any extra pressure on yourself, knowing that the UFC are, of course, in town that weekend, to really put on a show?
No, I'm just not wrestling. I might end up taking the guy down by accident. I haven't seen what his takedown defense is like at all, because he's been fighting kind of shit people who've sort of bummed in on him. And then I found footage of him doing a jiu-jitsu comp. Someone shot at him. He went for a arm in guillotine with his right arm. But like, I don't know. I don't particularly intend on wrestling. If I do take him down, like, I out of instinct, or like if I catch a kick and dump him, it's ground and pound I'm going for. Just because I've only got one KO on my record at the minute. Like, I've had a few fights where I've battered the guy and then just submitted them because that's what, it's just been there. But like, if I'd have kept going, I could have got a KO, and that would have probably looked nicer on my resume. But I've fucked it by going for submissions. I'm not doing that this fight. I'm not doing anything of the sort. I'm punching him and kicking him and kneeing him until he can't take it anymore because he's a big old juicy Brazilian gas bag.
So you've touched on Vegas there, you've touched on Contender Series. Of course, your brother George Hardwick, Cage Warriors lightweight champion, will be competing out on this season of the Dana White Contender Series. What was that experience like out in Vegas? And just how proud are you to see how far your little brothers went?
It was fucking mint. I didn't expect to like Vegas that much. I kind of thought I'd hate it. I don't know. It was just, it had a really good vibe there. I know you could be very pessimistic and skeptical and say, oh, the people were just good manners because there's a tipping culture there. But it wasn't just people hunting for tips that were polite. It was like everyone in Vegas was really polite. I didn't expect that level of politeness. The scran was good. The gyms were good. You know, got a bit of training at Syndicate MMA. Obviously, Davey Grant sorted that out for us. And then it's weird how me and Davey Grant have talked about doing rounds with each other for years. The first time we do it is fucking 5,000 miles away or some bullshit. But it was good experience. No one was a dickhead at that gym. So you got to see like the UFC Apex and see all these UFC buildings. It was great. I want to spend more time in Vegas. And then obviously you get crap American coffee that's actually nice in a weird way.
And how about for you to see George as well then? Sorry, just seeing how far he's got and getting this opportunity.
Yeah, like it's kind of expected, to be fair. I don't know. He's not someone who needs pushing in any way. He's never, just going entirely from a coaching perspective, like ignoring the fact that he's my brother. He has the best trait that a student could have. Like, and I've always thought this with any student, the best trait that they could have is if you were to leave them alone in a room with nothing by themselves for a week, could they still get better? And George would get loads better. Like, he's just incredibly self-directed, incredibly self-motivated. He doesn't particularly do much else or is interested in much else. And he really, really grafts and has like a good mind for what he's doing. So it's like, I get my role is very important, as a big brother and as a coach, and then there's Abdul and Pete are also coaching him. But he's very deserving of this opportunity. In fairness, he should just be straight off to the UFC. But I feel like what they're doing is they're getting him in front of an American audience first. Kind of similar how they did with Paddy, how his first fight was in Vegas, which is smart. But yeah, he's very, very much deserves this offer, and I think it's a very tough fight. I am not overlooking Al Salwadi in any way. There's a lot of things that Al Salwadi does very well. He's a really good wrestler, and he's awkward because he's short. And he's like a good ground and pounder. He's very good at like sort of putting people in like frying pan fire situations on the ground, like where there's no real good choice. So there's a lot of things we've really got to work. We've really got to be careful with. But George has been sparring Abdul Muhammad for however many years. It's something we're very well prepared for. This stockier, big bombs boxer wrestler with an inside low kick, like it decent ground and pound. It's stuff we're very well prepared for. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it though. I'm really looking forward to just that experience of just a different experience for cornering George as well. Because obviously the last 6 of cornering George, or the last couple of cornering George, have been in very familiar circumstances. Like Cage Warriors is very familiar to us now. Me and George were actually talking about this the other day. It's like, my next fight is so familiar. It's a hotel. We're staying at a hotel we've stayed at before, fighting in a venue both of us have fought at before, for a promotion where we know everyone who works for it. We know the crack. We know the routine. It's very, very familiar, whereas George, new country, new venue, new promotion, new this, new that. There's a lot of unfamiliar stuff. So it poses its challenges, and we have to respect those things. We can't be blasé about the fact, even though like some of it probably doesn't make much of a difference at all. We can't be blasé about the fact that a lot of new stuff. Although we were both saying when we stepped into the UFC cage for the first time when we were in Vegas, it almost felt like home, because we spent decades seeing that cage. That's always been in the back of our minds since we started. So there was nothing imposing or like, I don't want to say like overly special, but it wasn't this big emotional moment. It just felt comfortable. It felt like home. It felt like this is where we should be. This is something we've seen millions and millions of times. But yeah, I've waffled on for quite a while then.
Finally then, Harry, look, July 21st, Cage Warriors 157. What can fans expect from yourself? And can I get a prediction off you, please?
Second round finish. I'll fuck it, you can have the game plan. Southpaw stuff, straight shots down the middle. Probably a knee. Or a left straight. That's what I'm saying.
There we go. As simple as that. And we'll have that clipped for the night when that does happen, so I can get that straight out. Look, Harry, thank you very much for your time here today, matey.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All the best, mate. Cheers.